share with everybody after this afternoon's workshop so that you can make connections and network with people, as a result of us all meeting here today. If you would like to put your contact information, your name, your title, and where you are geographically in the chat right now, that would be great. That way we can just quickly read who's in the room. And then we'll quickly introduce ourselves, and then I think we'll jump right in. I muted you all coming in, so if you can keep your mics off unless you want to contribute, then you're welcome to unmute yourselves, of course. You can raise your hand or use the hand raising icon feature if that's easier. And if you're able to put your camera on, that would be great. We are going to be doing arts activities, and we're going to be doing a lot of movement. So it will be a lot more fun for everybody, and you'll get a better idea of these activities if your camera is on. But if you have some issues with technology and can't put your camera on, that's okay. We can work around that. I'll just start by introducing myself, and then I'll turn it over to Brooke. My name is Stephanie Singer. I'm actually in New York. I'm a little bit outside of New York City. For about 7 years, I directed a program called Everyday Arts for Special Education. It was a federally funded research project on the role of the arts in developing social emotional learning, particularly with students with disabilities. I am currently an adjunct professor at New York University and also at Mount St. Mary College up here in the Hudson Valley, teaching early childhood education and how to integrate the arts into education. And so I'm happy to be with you all today. And Brooke and I also collaborate, and we do community arts programs and projects, particularly with youth and adolescents, and especially young women who are experiencing trauma and other mental health related issues. So I will turn it over to Brooke.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having us. As Stephanie said, we have been collaborating for a very long time. We met while both facilitating and creating art projects in the same school in an area of New York City called Washington Heights. And we realized that we both had very similar goals in doing so. In the process of making things, making art, exploring materials and exploring concepts, we really got to know the kids, and we really got to know their social needs, their emotional needs, their familial needs. And we just saw how creating art with kids really opened them up. We had very similar philosophies on how to lay out a curriculum, how to conduct an activity, the role of art in learning and in relationship development. So we started collaborating. Currently, I'm the director of professional development at an organization called Counseling in Schools in New York City. And I train teachers and administrators in how to approach learning in a creative and emotional way. The classic learning style, at least in the United States, is a teacher stands in front of a room, all kids are looking up, the teacher writes on a board, the children copy, they memorize, they repeat back. That's sort of a classic educational model. We're seeing that, what keeps children engaged, what keeps them off the streets a lot or out of risky behavior, or at least maintaining open communication with the adults in their life, is engaging in creative processes, and it helps the learning. So we're very happy to be here. All to say, you all do such interesting and important work. I'm seeing Lucy's role in sexual reproductive health and gender equality. Umar, thank you so much for letting us know what you do and the things that you're fighting for. And as Stephanie said, please put your information in the chat so that we can know more. And we're happy to be here because no matter what you do, whether you are a teacher or a social worker or raising money for health and awareness and research, you're engaging with youth, or your staff is engaging with youth. And we today want to present some strategies, some information about how emotions are developed and expressed. And as professionals with expertise and years under your belts, as we say, we know that you'll take the information, you'll interpret it, and you'll use it in a way that's appropriate for you and your work with youth. So again, I encourage you to just put some information in the chat about who you are. And as Stephanie said, we're going to have some time to discuss one-on-one. Great, so we'll just get into it. So as the title says, we are here using the arts to, what's the title, Stephanie? I'm sorry. Using the arts.
Using the arts to address the social emotional needs of youth. Yeah.
Exactly. So we use the term social emotional, social emotional, social emotional. Of course, social means interacting with the world or a group of peers, and emotional largely, is a personal, singular, individual thing. But of course, the two affect each other. Who you surround yourself with affects your emotions, and your emotions affect who you choose to be around and the decisions you make. So they affect each other. So the social emotional needs of youth. Next slide. I'm ready now.
All right. So we want to just orient you to what social emotional learning is. And then I think we're going to just quickly warm up with a game just to kind of get ourselves acclimated to movement and activity. And then we'll dive into some of the topics that we'll be covering today. So, and this might be familiar information to all of you. It likely is language that comes up in your work all the time, but we want to just sort of ground ourselves in some of the vocabulary that we'll be using today when we talk about social emotional development. What is SEL? Social emotional learning or social emotional development. We're not obviously all talking about educational settings. We're also talking about mental health practice and settings with, in counseling. But the pillars of social emotional learning, as we sort of understand them to be, are self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. And where, adolescents are at in terms of their social emotional learning their social emotional development can really vary depending on, what supports they have in place and have had in place from early childhood, and what are some of the adverse experiences that they have in their lives that could be impacting their ability to develop in a healthy way. So today we want to leave room for you to share what some of the challenges are facing the adolescents that you work with and how that shows up in terms of their socialization and in terms of their emotional development. So really quickly before we talk for a while, we wanted to just warm you guys up with a quick game. And so we're going to play a little activity, and this is why it might be nice.
Sorry, Steph, can you not share the screen? That way folks can see us while we play the game.
Yes, sorry, I was just about to. All right. So if you can put your cameras on, that would be great. If you are not able to, that's okay. If you can just follow my verbal prompts, that is fine. So this is a game, it's actually was conceived of by a group called Theater of the Oppressed, and we talked a little bit about them in our first workshop we did in March. They do a lot of socially engaged community-based practice, and particularly using theater and movement. So what we're going to do is when I say forward, you're going to lean forward. And when I say backward, you're going to lean backward. Okay. And we'll start with those two prompts and we'll see how it goes. All right. So if you can turn your cameras on, that would be great. Otherwise, just follow along with us. All right. Backwards. Forwards. Backwards. Backwards. Forwards. Backwards. Forwards. Backwards. Backwards. All right. This time what we're going to do is we're going to use now right to left with our head prompts, and we're going to add that. So if I say right, you're going to turn your head to the right. And if I say left, you're going to turn your head to the left. And if I say forward, you're going to go forward. And if I say backward, we're going to go backward. All right. And let's see how that goes. All right, here we go. Left. Forward. Backward. Right. Left. Left. Forward. Backward. Right. All right, this time we're going to do opposites. So when I say forward, you're going to go backward. When I say backward, you're going to go forward. When I say left, you're going to go right. And when I say right, you're going to go left. All right. So we're going to reprogram. We're going to go opposites. All right. So here we go. Forward. Oh. Right. Backwards. Right. Left. Backwards. Forwards. Right. Left. Forward. Oh, I messed it up. All right. Does somebody want to lead us? Can someone else give us the prompts? So tell us when to go forward, backward, right, or left, and we will follow you. And we are going to do the opposite. Umar, can you give us the instructions?
Okay.
All
Okay.
right. Josephine,
So
welcome. All right.
my rules will be different.
Okay. Give us some new
My
rules.
rules, the left is forward, the backwards is right,
Okay.
and the right is backwards, and the left is forward.
Okay.
So we'll start. Let me repeat it again. The
Okay.
left is forward. Left is forward.
Got it.
Right is backwards. Right is forward. Right, left is backwards. So it's vice versa.
Okay.
So when I say forward, meaning you move to left. When I say backward,
Okay.
you move to right.
Got it.
When I say forward, you move to left. When I say backwards, you move to right.
Okay.
Vice versa.
All right.
So
we're gonna try it.
backwards,
Backwards is left.
forward,
Right.
left, right. Let's do it again.
Okay.
Let's do it again. Forward, backwards, left, left, forward, backwards, right.
Thank
Forward,
Good
left.
job. Thank you. You got it.
So
you. Thank you for doing that. Yeah. So, you know, just a game to warm up. And I know someone expressed interest in how we use games and play and the role of that in the arts as well. What I love about this game is that, and in Theater of the Oppressed, when they do this with adolescents and with communities, it's to open a conversation around demechanization. So how are we programmed to do certain things and we follow them blindly without thinking? And how can we demechanize ourselves and learn new rules and learn new ways of doing things? And so it's a fun way to get into a deeper conversation with youth about how we are all sort of mechanized in certain ways, but it's up to us. We do have the autonomy to sort of shift that. And the arts, we think, is one way to demechanize and to shift things. And it's a different way of working and looking at ourselves and looking at our communities and looking at our societies and some of these social problems, and to question them, to question our role in society. And so today we want to really get into that, how we can use very simple arts-based strategies to demechanize ourselves in relationship to the youth we work with, to explore our relationship in a really new and powerful way. So we're just going to cover some very broad strokes of what the arts and social emotional learning in relationship to each other are, a little bit of data and research on it, and then we're going to jump into some activities. So if you just joined, welcome. Please feel free to show yourself and turn on your camera. And, of course, if you cannot, that's fine. We're happy to have you. All right, so we'll skip ahead here.
All right. I think just would you mind going back one slide very quickly, Steph? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
For the folks that just joined, we use the term social emotional learning a lot, and we're here to discuss the social emotional needs of youth. And social emotional learning is a creative way of approaching work with really anybody, but it's really about relationship building. And you see on the bottom, the relationship skills. So these are, according to the Yale University School of Emotional Learning and Emotional Intelligence, these are the 5 pillars of social emotional learning. Relationship skills, they overlap a lot. And these activities that we're going to present, they really touch on ways to be self-aware, awareness of one's emotions, which is what we're talking about today. Self-management, the way that you regulate those emotions and express them in a responsible way. Social awareness, what other people are feeling, what the mood of the room is, what's quote unquote appropriate in a moment, what's going on in your environment. Responsible decision making, especially as it relates to adolescence, is what we're really going to be talking about today. And then relationship skills, how you get into a relationship, how quickly you get close to someone, how you build trust. All of these things affect each other. So in regards to youth, especially pre-adolescent and adolescent youth, they're going through many changes. You all know that. I see the titles of many of you in the chat. Executive Director of Youth Program, personnel working with clinical psychologists. We know the changes that youth are going through. They're seeking independence. They are seeking responsibility. They're figuring out their identity. And that is developmentally appropriate. That's what their brain is pushing them to do. They're thinking about right and wrong, the messages that they've been given from their elders, their teachers, their society, and what they are developing as their own beliefs. And Umar, before we started, was talking about social demands and societal, religious, political demands on everyone's culture. That, of course, also has an impact on, what youth view as right or wrong and the decisions that they're going to make. A lot of times, many of us are in cultures where the cultural demands are sort of fighting against the developmental demands of a young person's brain. They're likely more prone to engage in risky behavior. The influence of friends is extremely strong. If working with a very young person, they like a 5-year-old or a 9-year-old, they might be less prone to engage in some risk because they're still maybe thinking about what the teacher said, thinking about what mom or dad said. As people get a little bit older, they're seeking that independence, they're more prone to engage in risk-taking behavior. Obviously, sexual identity. This is the time when hormones are coming out, and there are urges, there are desires, there are needs. And of course, we are now in an era where the internet and devices and social media play a huge role. So these are the social changes going on, the outside influence. And of course, the emotional influence. I spoke about that a little earlier. Hormones, brain development, intense emotions. Social emotional learning talks about how to control and express these emotions. There might be hypersensitivity, social awareness, noticing another person's emotions, taking them on. We talk a lot about empathy today. There's more sensitivity to another person's emotions. And of course, the body is changing. Folks are becoming adults or getting closer to adulthood, self-consciousness around the body. And we see a lot of conflicting things going on emotionally, such as there's this self-consciousness, there's a sensitivity, and at the same time, there's this bulletproof stage where young people act as if nothing's bad is going to happen to them. And if we go back what we said about the social changes, they might engage in risky behavior because they're not totally aware that they're not bulletproof. So these are some of the social and emotional changes. When we talk about social emotional learning, the strategies that we're presenting, they're arts-based. Stephanie and I are both artists, and arts and education, or any relationship building that you're doing with youth as a youth provider, it has concrete benefits. As we see some of these facts from the United States National Endowment for the Arts, adolescents engaged in music and dance are significantly less likely to be engaged in dangerous behaviors. Part of it is because they have something to attach their identity to explore their sense of purpose, to explore what's important to them. And the other part is that it takes time. You know, if they're engaged in an activity that takes place after school, that's less idle time. So there are two factors at play. Adolescents engaged in visual arts, same thing. So SEL and the arts have numerous positive effects. As I said in my introduction, Stephanie and I met while facilitating arts programs for youth. These are some of them on the screen: positive environment, collaboration and communication. If you're making something with a young person, or you're just prompting them to make something, you're engaged in a conversation. And the arts largely are based in metaphor. And so you're talking about things under the surface as well. And okay.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
okay. Let's keep on going. No, let's keep on going. So
go ahead.
Go ahead.
So just in terms of some of the work that we've done, I wanted to pull some data from a research project. I mentioned that I directed a program called Everyday Arts for Special Education, and it was a multi-year study looking directly at the impact of arts-based activities on students' learning and behavioral outcomes. And not to say that this data maps perfectly onto the context that you work in, but I think it gives us some insight into how the arts can provide a supportive framework for students who are experiencing different types of social challenges. So just very quickly, some of the data that we found in this research project in 2015 was that 84% of students who engaged in the arts-based curriculum that we provided mastered communication goals that were set by their instructors, by their counselors, by their physical therapists and occupational therapists. 80% of students mastered socialization goals. 75% of students demonstrated increased motivation, attention span, self-confidence, and positive risk-taking. And 84% of students improved their selected academic goals. So we just wanted to sort of root this, we all sort of have a sense of the value of the arts. It seems like from your feedback in your intake form, most of you are trying or often or sometimes using the arts in your work, but we don't always know how to speak to the direct concrete impact of the arts on some of the behaviors and challenges that we're facing with youth. So Just wanted to share that with all of you. So we wanted to take a minute just in the chat to hear from you all why you use the arts in your work, or why would you use the arts in the work that you do? So very quickly, if you want to just add into the chat an answer to that question, why use the arts in your work with youth? If you prefer to share by unmuting yourself, that's fine too. Yes, Umar.
My question is, based on this research, is it the students are in US, not globally, or just the research is based on only US?
Yes, that's a good question. Yeah, and that's one of the limits of the research, and certainly one of the limits of our experience. So knowing, how these kind of experiences impact youth in your global context is very important. And sort of understanding anecdotally from you where you see impact, and then being able to, replicate some of this research outside of the US, being able to understand how some of these activities impact youth globally.
Okay, thank you. Because I want to find out, because the research in US, it will be far different from the research that's going to back in Africa or Asia or South America or Europe. So I think we've been driven by your research so that it will give us a guidelines to understand the study that will guide us. I think. Thank you very much. That is my question.
Yeah, I appreciate you clarifying that. And if your organization is conducting research in this area and you have information to share, we would love to see it.
Thank you, Lynette. Art is a strong weapon of communication and also engaged to help. Yeah, exactly. So that is a very good point, Umar, that our research and our work is based in the United States. But as Lynette points out, making art, especially making art that's maybe a little abstract or weird, or, even what Stephanie did in the beginning, this movement exercise, if you get folks to laugh or just have an emotional response, you're communicating. And that reduces what's called the affective filter, meaning, it reduces the fear around communicating. And especially making art, whatever kind of art it is, it usually is based on stories and or emotions. So you're putting youth in a position to speak about their experiences, speak about their perspectives, and therefore you have an opening, whatever the issue is that they're dealing with, whether it's psychological, whether it's social or familial, or all of the above, it gives you a way to communicate with them about it, or at least gives you, as I like to say in my work with teachers, it gives you that frontline view of what they're going through. So thank you for Lynette for that. It helps them to discover aspects of themselves as well, for all the reasons that I just said. So thank you so much for that, Lynette, and for the clarifying question, Umar. Anyone else? Why or how might you use the arts with your work with youth?
Yes, can I come in?
Hi, Al Hassan. Yes.
Hello.
Yeah, so sorry for the interruptions. Today I had a very difficult challenge. It's beyond my control, so sorry to the audience. I'm now trying to share the link to the members. Thank you very much. I think this is a very delicate topic that needs to be, periodically needs to be, organizing so that members can learn. I think arts in Ghana is one of the most special tools that we use, especially when I was in kindergarten to primary school. We usually do what we call drama or what we call role play. And this has really changed my life through this kind of artwork. And in Ghana also, we have what we call visual arts. And visual art is something that we use to educate people, especially with storytelling, anything storytelling, and then anything that people, people draw to have a positive impact in this adolescent. So yes, in Ghana, we use this role play and other forms of art to educate people, because we know that majority of the people learn by seeing. Others also learn by hearing. So I think art has been part of us, for the people, for the children, for the adolescent to identify who they are and how to relate with people and understand people better in their own, in their world. So yeah, that is the reason why I think we learn art in our area of operation.
Thank you. Yeah. So I think we're going to jump right into some activities, and we'd love to hear from you throughout in terms of how you could use some of these strategies with the youth that you work with. So quickly, Umar, you have a question?
Yeah, mine is just a contribution. Alassane just let me recollect an issues about our education and our acts. Our education is not the best, simply because we categorize our education in the three forms: science, business, and arts. So if Alassane will correct me, those who in the arts sector are seen as inferior students. Those who are in the science student are seen as intelligent, and those who are the business are seen as average. So based on the acts that we find ourselves, majority of students in Ghana are ACT students. And the ACTs normally, emotionally, most of them are not ready to study ACT. So in the class, you find that more than 1,000 people are in the ACT class, and more than 100 people are in the science class, and more than 200 people are in the business class. So at the end of the day, the ACT students, because of the emotional choice that they put them there, it did not materialize for them to proceed to university. So you can see consistently, the business and the science students are progressive to the university, and the ACT students are regulated to the community. I think Alassane will support my idea, because more than 1,000 students in the ACT, because of the psychological way or emotional way of choosing the course for them, it makes them not to perform.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you, Umar. So I'm just gonna, for the sake of time, I'd like us to move into these strategies. It sounds like that's a whole other conversation, because the arts in education, and here too, we call it liberal arts. It kind of encompasses a whole realm of social studies. And what we're talking about is very, very specifically arts strategies in relating to youth, and that based in visual arts like painting, based in theater arts like what Stephanie did, and based in movement arts, to access emotions and conversation. So and really what we're about to do with everybody, we've done it with youth from 5 years old through adults. So maybe after we engage in that, we could hear if you think that this would be developmentally appropriate for the youth that you serve in Ghana. But it sounds like that's a whole other topic about how they choose their area of study and whether or not they're mature enough. These are we're talking about specific arts-based strategies that, maybe afterwards we could discuss if you see yourself able to use them in your work. Okay, so as I said, we're just going to show you some strategies based in visual art, theater, and movement. So we're going to do something called visual inquiry. So inquiry meaning question, and visual because we're looking. So this I always say to teachers or youth providers, you can use any image that is relevant to your area of study or your discipline with youth. It could be a newspaper article, it could be a frame from a movie. We're using this painting because we like it and because it's fairly neutral. But basically, if you look to the left of the painting, there are 3 questions. What do you see? And that could be as simple as, I see paint. What do you think? What are the associations? What does this make you think of? And what do you wonder? What questions does this bring up for you? So as if we are all a room full of young people, just like I would invite anyone to put on their microphone and speak, or you are welcome to put your thoughts into the chat. You know, answer any of the questions. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder when you look at this slide?
Yeah, so let me come in. Can you hear me?
Yep, yeah, perfectly.
Yes, I think this art reminds me of back when we were in school. When you see an art like this, it means it is the kingdom of God, where the Almighty God, is in the white region, and then you see the lightning, the red, the blue is the acting forces of God. Yes. So so most of the times you see the angels around the lightning. And then I think, in my perspective, it is something like a heaven towards the earth. So the heaven. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm putting everything that you say in the chat so that folks who are, you know, so that just we can have a record of everyone's perspectives. Maybe we have the same thoughts, maybe we have different thoughts, but this way we can have a record of it. Great, and thank you so much, Al Hassan. Anyone else? Well, I'll go. I see a landscape. You know, just to simplify the vision, you said heaven and earth. I see earth and a big circle in the middle. And yes, I also see red and blue. I see red and blue and purple. So I see a landscape. So I'm gonna just put that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Umar, please.
Yeah, for me, I saw a mountain. I saw a mountain, which is like a volcano just burst in the mountain, and it bright to the air. So it's like on the top of a mountain, that volcano just erupts. So there,
Well, like a volcano. Okay, great.
Yeah, that's what I see. I see a mountain with a volcano on top of it, erupting volcano. Thank you.
Thank you. And anyone else, anyone who has their microphones off, if you would like to turn it on and share or put it in the chat, we'd love to hear your perspective. So just for the sake of time, I'm just going to move on and use this as an example. What I got from Al Hassan sharing is a sense of his spirituality, a sense of his religion. You know, I saw something else when I heard Umar. I didn't necessarily think of a volcano erupting, but I suppose that the lights or the lines going outward could be like an eruption. And, you know, if we were to go through the room and hear everyone, I'm sure everyone would have a slightly different and personal interpretation of this. And it might give us the opportunity to share other beliefs of, whether spiritual or just visual. Stephanie, what do you see?
Yeah, I see, I also have feelings attached to this, and I would also invite youth you work with to share things they feel. I feel warmth, I feel expansion, I feel brightness, I feel possibility, I feel hope. But you might have youth who would see this and say, I see explosion. I see, even the idea of a volcano erupting, it's like something is brewing and something's ready to explode. So there's an emotional attachment we can make to images beyond just what we see, or there's emotions in the youth we work with that we can infer depending on how they respond. So sometimes their response will give us a story, and sometimes their response will give us some sense of their emotional state, or just an observation, something that's interesting to them that we can then build on. But yeah, this makes me feel kind of a sense of joy and hope, and even escape.
Does anyone have any questions about this or thoughts? The reason we use visual inquiry is we sort of touched on that already. Youth can share their associations and opinions, and thus you're building relationship in a low stakes way. It's not personal information, it's not their personal story, but it is their personal perspective, and it gives you a little bit of an opportunity to say more about that. Oh, why do you say that? Oh, what makes you say that? And it continue the conversation. It keeps the conversation open. And also something about the visual inquiry questions: what do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? There's no right or wrong. So it's an open-ended question that's not just yes or no. Whereas if we went there and we said, is it a sunset? Is it a landscape? Yes or no, it ends the conversation. But what do you see? What makes you say that? Can you say more? What do you wonder? It keeps the conversation going. So as we said, whatever's relevant to you, you can use this visual inquiry method. It could be a headline, like I said. It could be a diagram that Stephanie and I did this actually with some math teachers as a geometry lesson, circle and angles and lines could be a way to teach geometry as well, just using an example that you don't have to be an artist or an art teacher to use visual inquiry. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts on this? Has anybody used visual inquiry before?
Yes, we use, but in Ghana, we use it rarely in terms of our implementation.
Yeah, and you might show images, even having youth take photos or take images, or find images themselves that are interesting, bring a photograph and we'll look at it together and they can share what they notice. There's lots of different ways of doing this. Visual inquiry is fancy language for just looking at images, just looking at artwork and using artwork as a way of having a conversation. So yeah, as Brooke said, there are infinite ways you can use this in practice. And I'm sure many of you have sat across from an adolescent who does not want to talk about themselves, who is shut down and does not want to say how they're feeling. So it can be wonderful to pull out a book of images of artwork or photographs and invite them to just point to something and say what they see.
Great.
All right. So we're going to do another form of visual inquiry. It's a kind of form of visual inquiry, but we're going to use our bodies. And this is, of course, going back to this idea of using the arts to tap into our emotional state, how we're feeling, and how do we express that outwardly. So I know most of us have our cameras off, but for those of you who have your cameras on, and certainly Brooke and I will model this, when I say go, and you can do this at home even if your camera is off, I want you to put your body into the position of the woman that you see in the picture. I want you to look at her facial expression, her arms, everything, and I want you to see if you can put yourself into the form of this woman's body. All right? So you can stand up, you can do it sitting, whatever is comfortable for you. All right, here we go. Ready? Go. Nice. And rest. What emotion do you feel? What do you, when you look at her, when you feel yourself in that position, what emotions do you have?
Yes, I
So
feel like
excitement.
Excitement,
Yes.
freedom.
freedom. Yeah. Yeah, she's ecstatic.
Joy, freedom, liberation, and you feel it too. Like as soon as you put your body in that situation and you smile, it's not just that you're imitating, it's that you feel it. And I saw that Jerry is from a theater, and you know, theater arts, I'm sure you know, the line between reality and what you're portraying is blurred when you're actually portraying it.
Yeah, so these are great words to describe her. And we could just look at this picture with youth and say, what do you see and what does she look like? But something happens when we actually mirror that, right? When we feel what this person might be feeling. All right, pick a figure in this image. And when I say go, put yourself into the position that they're in. All right, so ready? Go. And stop. What emotions, what feelings do you have when you put yourself into the position of one of these figures?
Yeah, I saw that you were suffocating, a bit more of suffocating. And then I also saw Madam Brooke in a form of, you know, halfway. But I didn't really understand that aspect.
Yeah, so I see somber. Yeah, there's a somberness, right? You know, even when I did this position and I put my fingers on I felt like I was thinking, or I was processing something. I was contemplating. Yeah, felt the weight of the world on me. Yeah, her shoulders are slumped down, her head is down, eyes are closed, right? So a little different. All right, we can do this one seated. All right, when I say go, we're gonna put ourselves into the position of this figure. All right, so study him for a second. All right, ready? And go. And rest. What about this one? What emotion did you feel?
I saw something like shyness.
Shyness, deep sadness and helplessness, anguish. Yeah, he's hunched over, right? And he's grabbing at his face and he's covering his face and his whole body is crumpled up, right? So there's some real despair here. Frustration. Yeah, I felt that. I don't know if anyone else felt that. Disappointed and pained. Yeah, when I was doing this, I was like grabbing at my eyes and I felt so tense. Yeah, pained. These are great words. So why might we use an activity like that? Why might we use with youth? Why might we show them images and and have them sort of position their bodies into the form of that image? We could ask them how they're feeling. We could ask them to describe a feeling, but why would we have them sort of put their bodies, look at an image and put their bodies into the position of a figure? Any thoughts?
The question again, please.
Oh, why would we use an activity like that with youth? Why might we ask youth to put their bodies into the position of an image that they see, to mirror the emotion of an image?
Yeah, so it possesses how people feel. It's a non-verbal way of communicating to others.
Yeah. So again, all of this, from the visual inquiry to using our bodies, right? We're giving nonverbal ways of expressing. So ways that move beyond language, which can be limiting for some youth, and ways of visually and with our bodies expressing how we're feeling. Yeah. So I think we'll do this next activity as a whole group. And when we do this with educators and when we do this with youth, we've called it bag of feelings. And it's an opportunity to identify, to sort of self-identify feelings, and then to do a similar activity where we will use our bodies to express that emotion and then invite others to mirror us. So we might just model one round of this because most people don't have cameras on, and I think we've lost a couple folks. So we'll share it with you just as a strategy that you can do. So maybe very quickly, if you want to put in the chat, what are some emotions, what are some behaviors that you see in the youth that you work with? So what are some, emotions that you experience that are challenging for youth that you work with, or what are some of the behaviors? So you can just put those as you want into the chat. Independence. Mm-hmm. Anyone else? What are some emotions or behaviors that you see? Silence, avoidance, annoyance and frustration, self-pity, resentment. Great. Anyone else?
Anger and frustration.
Anger and frustration. Yeah, great. So what we're going to do is ask someone to pick one of these words and think about what that looks like for you. So what happens in your body when you're feeling resentment or frustration? And then we want you to put yourself into that position, and the rest of us are going to mirror you. So we'll mirror what you're feeling. Oop, you have Umar back. Hold on. Just letting him back in. Okay. Maybe we can model this first. Brooke, do you want to pick a word?
Sure.
And show us with your body what that looks like for you.
Okay. One of my least favorite positions of when working with a young person, I'm going to choose annoyance and frustration. I put it so. I'd say the position is, I'm rolling my eyes too. I'm going to include my facial expression as well as the position.
All right, so let's all look at Brooke and then see.
I'll move my camera.
Yeah. And see if we can't put ourselves into the position that Brooke is in. So she's expressing what annoyance and frustration looks like for her. So we're all going to do that. Nice. All right. Al Hassan, can you pick what is one of the words that we've shared from behaviors or emotions we see in the youth we work with, and can you show us what that emotion looks like for you?
Okay. Yes, some of them, I think, because they want to, they want to move, they want to be to have their freedom. So some of the emotions they possess is silence. Sometimes they are silence, looking at the way we want to connect with them, the way we want to, to give them directives. Don't go here, sit here, be here. Don't follow this guy, don't follow this lady. It's all sort of stuff. So yes, so silence is one of the things I have noticed.
And what is silence when someone is telling you things to do and you're sort of just listening and silent? What does your body look like or feel like?
Okay, so in that case, the person sometimes is either isolated and then be like this. So yes, so doing that indicates that the person has something that is going through the mind, and the person needs a solution to whatever she or he is thinking.
Yeah. Such a simple, subtle gesture. If we all did that, we now understand that this means I'm thinking, I'm internally having I'm thinking about something internally. I'm withdrawing maybe from the conversation. Yeah. So an activity like this with a group of adolescents, if you were to ask an adolescent to share with you what anger looks like for them, it might look really bottled up and contained. It might look like I'm smashing everything to pieces, right? And by having their peers model and mirror that back to them, that's a theater activity. It's a very basic mirroring mime theater activity. But it allows them to not only share what their expression of an emotion looks like, but to be validated in seeing their peers mirror that back to them, right? And we don't always know what's going on with youth, and we don't always understand their body language, but this is an activity that can be interesting to get young people talking about, more than talking about, showing you what they look like, what these emotions look like for them physically. Yeah, Umar.
Yes, although it looks like the facial of your face too can interpret your emotional representative. But sometimes I don't know, but I don't know of your side, because sometimes it's being misrepresent the person. It depends on what issues that comes, and the facial or the action of the person or the movement, the body of the person respond. They're communicating to you, because you can communicate to somebody, and the way he will respond to you, not verbally, but let me say, is non-verbal communication. The way is facial, the way the person uses his hand can be representative of his emotion or what he interprets. But that's why in our side it can be different way, because sometimes, as Alasan said, somebody will remain silent, but he meant a lot. The silence that he made, it meant a lot, simply because of his emotion, the way he approached things, and what transpired, the issues would depend his silence, and respond to can depend what the person's meant. So I think silence is one key. Silence is one key to us.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a great point, which is we don't all communicate things the same way. You know, silence can mean anything from I'm listening to I'm shut down to I'm in pain to I'm, you know, taking a moment to calm myself. It could mean so many things. And so when we do these kinds of games and activities that are rooted in the arts and give youth a chance to share with us what these physical expressions mean for them, it's another way for us to gather information and learn, so that we don't make assumptions. Because if for Al Hassan silence looks like this, it may not look like that at all for some of the youth that he's working with. It could mean a head down on a table, or it could just mean a blank stare into space, right? So we can never assume, and so these activities can help us to better understand youth. Yeah. So we have about 15 minutes left, and we wanted to just do one other visual arts activity, or at least share it, and you know, invite you to explore this as something you can do with youth and adolescents that you work with. So we talk sometimes, you know, about when we're working with youth and we're talking about emotional self-awareness, and early on in the first slides Brooke shared, we talked about how at the teenage years and in adolescence, youth are becoming much better at naming emotions and actually understanding their emotions. They don't always have control over them. They don't always know how to, you know, respond, you know, responsibly, or, you know, they sometimes respond impulsively to those emotions, but they're certainly able to better identify them in themselves. So, and we've also talked a little bit about embodiment and how theater arts in particular and movement can help us to express, you know, share how we express ourselves with our body. So these body activation charts can be very interesting to just share with young people, you know, showing them sort of where in the body physically we experience sensations and activation depending on our emotional state. When we're anxious, most people feel warmth and activation in their chest and their stomach, but their legs and arms might be totally deactivated. In depression, you can see the whole body is deactivated, right? Everything is, you know, immobile. You know, surprise, we've got some emotions up in the chest and in the head. Other emotions, you know, happiness, the whole body is sort of activated and warm and glowing. So getting young people to really identify where in the body they're having certain emotions, where they're feeling and experiencing that, can be a great way not only to kind of ground them when they're feeling things like fear or sadness or anxiety, but is also just another way to help them to express themselves. So Brooke, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. So keeping in mind what we just saw about the activation of the body, and also keeping in mind, you know, what might have happened in our emotional and physical states when we put ourselves in other positions, we're going to ask you to do a drawing activity. And if you are not somebody who draws or paints, don't worry, this is very, very easy. And it's just a reflection of how you're feeling, what your social emotional need or state is at the moment. So we have here some paintings by an American painter named Alma Thomas, and she makes these abstract paintings using very bright colors and shapes. She's very big on shapes and sort of showing the rainbow. And of course, we could do a visual inquiry about this, how this makes you feel.
Sorry.
Yeah. Just let me know when you're ready.
Yeah.
Could you go back to Alma Thomas?
Thanks.
So as you see, she's showing the rainbow and she's showing different lines. You know, obviously the first one is a circle with sort of a rainbow going through it. Very simple, you know, brush strokes and, you know, movement of the paint on the paper. And the next one are these more geometric shapes. And while we can do a visual inquiry of what this makes you feel and what this makes you think, I'm just asking you to keep it in mind for what this makes you think of, what it makes you feel, each different painting, because we're going to ask you to represent where you are emotionally activated right now through color and through line. So if you could go to the next slide, this is a painter named Hilma F. Clint. And she also represents these emotional states with color and line and shapes. And her paintings are, you know, sort of mystical. And just take a moment to look at this. And again, reflect on what this makes you think, what it makes you feel, what it makes you wonder. And check in with yourself as how you're doing right now. So next slide. So we're going to ask you to get a pen and paper. And if you have some colored pencils or drawing, colorful, you know, drawing materials, great. If not, no problem.
Sorry.
And we're going to ask you to draw a circle. And that circle represents your body right now. We're not going to ask you to draw an outline of your body or what you know, just imagine the circle is you. And using line, and if you have it, using color. And if you don't have color, you could, you know, scribble in a solid scribble of whatever pencil or pen you have. Draw inside the circle shapes, lines, colors that represent how you are feeling right now, what your activation is right now. And imagine that, try to be as abstract as possible. Try not to use symbols that you know, or things that are literal and very representative. Try to be as abstract as possible. And again, thinking of those, you know, examples that we use, think of color and line as a metaphor for your emotional activation. So let's just take a few moments to grab a pen and paper and reflect on that. And maybe if we have some music, Steph?
Sure. I'll get it on.
And how long do you think folks might want? Like, let's give it like 3 to 5 minutes just because we're running low on time.
Yeah. All right.
Does anybody have any questions? Is that clear? Do we need some clarification? Okay, great. Everyone here is an artiste.
Yes, I want to ask a question concerning color and emotion. Color and emotion. So is color represents emotion, or is we that normally make the color to represent our emotion?
You know what? This is up to you. You know, Stephanie showed some slides of where we get activated in our bodies for certain emotions. And the colors they chose were like what's considered hot colors, you know, yellow, pink, but you do not have to do that. The colors can mean anything to you. Just, thank you, Al-Hassan, you are done. So, Umar, whatever the colors represent to you, you know, if you have, you know, colored pencils, crayons, or markers available, I would say use your own imagination and your own associations.
Okay, I'm done.
Can you hold it a little closer to the camera?
So,
Okay, I see you use the line to go all over the circle and fill the circle. Thank you. And Al-Hassan, you kept a space in the center of the circle and you used some quick lines around it. So, and then there's a person on the outside. Would anybody else like to put on your camera and share your drawing? And, you know, if you don't want to show yourself, or you don't want to show the environment where you are, you could also just, I'll use my phone because I have it available. You could just hold it up to the camera and then turn your camera on, so that's all we see. But maybe we give it a minute.
Sure.
And if you're done with the exercise, take some more time to do it some more, or do it again.
And if you have already done it, you can also, sometimes it's helpful to just close your eyes and make marks on the paper depending on how you're feeling. So without looking at the paper, you can sort of just let the pencil or pen move around.
So, is that okay?
All right, let's just take one more minute and then we'll come back.
All right. So it's 1:26. I do invite everybody to share what they've done. And if not, you know, we will be sharing this presentation with Al Hassan, and maybe in response, you can share what your drawing was. But the point of the activity is not necessarily an art show. It's more exploring your own emotional state. And we could also say your emotional needs at the moment, because if you recognize, if we go back to what we first talked about with the 5 principal concepts of social emotional learning, if you are self-aware and you know where you're activated right now, you know what you're feeling right now, you can also manage that emotion. You could, if you're very angry, you could not react immediately, maybe express it in a productive way. And this activity we do with youth because it also is a way that we could do visual inquiry with them. You know, every person is a world. Al-Hassan held up a drawing, he put a star and he filled in 2 sections. I could inquire about that. I could inquire what those sections represent. You know, why he chose to scribble in a circle fashion and not back and forth. And it's just a way for maybe also, if Al-Hassan is my student or the young person I'm working with, for him to talk to me about it. Thank you, Al-Hassan, for happily being my example. So I'm going to hand it back to Stephanie, but you know, just to review, we're talking about social emotional needs, social emotional awareness, expression, management of that, building relationships through the arts as just a way to enhance and deepen your understanding of the youth that you work with and what their needs are. Movement and embodiment as a way of understanding or changing emotions or expressing them. Sharing perspectives, using a visual tool to share perspectives, and then drawing as a way of, you know, as Lynette said earlier, communicating those emotions and exploring them.
Great. Well, thank you all. We only have about 1 more minute, but we would love to, you know, hear from you all. I'm going to send out a link to just a post-workshop survey with any questions that you have or feedback that you have. And it's an opportunity also to share your contact information so that others can have that. Before we close, are there any questions or just final comments on how you might use any of these strategies in your work, or any other questions or comments that you have about the topic today?
Yeah. Hello. So let me come in. So I think it is for what I've learned today, it is very good for us to, you know, add visual, to add art in our implementation. Example, showing adolescents some videos, some arts in a form of education, like film and other stuff. So I think adolescents and youth also learn through all these things. So it is very good for us to add some art skills into our education. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and we hope any one of these strategies might just get you to think about how the arts can play a role in building relationships with the youth you work with. And we'll hope to have an opportunity to connect with you more in the future and learn more about the work that you do.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for having us.
Thank you all.